adventure and the love of outdoors takes us completely across the state of Oregon.
Our state of Oregon. We're heading for Hell's Canyon for a little deer hunting and just to take some pictures and enjoy the scenery around the deepest canyon in the northern hemisphere. We follow the freeway up the Columbia River Gorge and then across the open plains, past ranches and farms and junkyards and cities, till finally the road becomes narrow and we look ahead. Here's a little tunnel. We go through the tunnel and it's like entering another world of adventure. Up a narrow gravel road for a few more miles will find us at a patch of grapes. We're going to sneak up there in case there's a bear there. Stephen wants him a nice bear. These are the Concord grapes that are growing wild here now. They were at one time planted either by homesteaders or else the moonshiners, and they've just grown wild out over all the trees and over the hillside. So there's all the grapes we could possibly want here, and they're ripe and ready to eat. But we're getting ready to go up into Hell's Canyon backpacking, so we won't pick any now or they would go bad by the time we get back. We strap on our backpacks and we're almost ready to go. We're parked at the trailhead right at the end of the road. From here on, it'll be trail all the way, and it's not a bad trail right up the river for about 3 miles. And we've only seen one rattlesnake so far, but we'll find 2 more before we get to where we leave the river. Right now, Stephen's in the lead, so he'll see all the rattlers along the trail before we get to them. Looks to be a rather nice rattlesnake. So I'll skin him so Stephen will have a skin that he can tack up on his wall and keep forever, as a reminder to his trip to this very, very special place. Stephen wants to try to eat the rattlesnake after we get him skinned, so if we have time, we'll cook and eat this rattlesnake. Personally, I'm not fond of rattlesnakes, but they do make excellent stew, but we don't have the rest of the ingredients to make stew, so maybe we'll just feed him to the coyotes and bears. They'd probably appreciate a nice rattlesnake. Snake is super easy to skin. The only thing, all that crawling around while you're skinning them, is a little bit difficult to hold them. But once you get them slit open, then you just jerk the hide right off all in one smooth motion. We'll move on up the trail. We're leaving the river now and climbing rather steeply. We'll climb for a few hours up the side of the canyon wall, which will put us about bench level. In front of me, I see a little bit of movement, and at first I thought it was just a stick, but wait a minute. I watched a little while longer, and it's the insect known as the walking stick, and he's very much alive. That's all just part of his camouflage scheme. We reached the bench level, and here's where we'll camp. We're camping right out on a point where we can look down the canyon by the river and also across this huge basin of Spring Creek. Stephen, being the youngest member of our group, is elected to be cook, and he doesn't mind doing that either. So we'll see what he can cook. We have to be real careful of our water. We're almost out of water already, and it's about 1.5 miles to the nearest water from where we are. So we'll cook a little bit here using a little bit of our water, but we're going to have to get water pretty soon. There's incredible scenery right in front of us as Stephen cooks our dinner. There's even a little group of ponderosas on the hillside beyond us. Since it's starting to rain already and looks like it's going to rain plenty tonight, the skies are cloudy and the clouds are rolling in. So we're going to cover our tent with a tarp, hoping to keep dry for the night. We had the chores pretty well done and just leaned back after dinner, and Dwayne looked across on the bench beyond us, and here's a little herd of elk out feeding. We notice there are 3 bulls in the herd, and they're bugling and hammering their horns together. The clicking of antlers and the spine-tingling bugle was really an added bonus to our trip up here. It's right in the final days of the rut, and we see the 2 bulls are moving off on a nice flat little hillside where they're going to square away and do a little shoving of each other. They carefully lock their antlers together, and then they shove and shove and shove. The old cows must have seen enough of that they're not even going to waste their time taking a look at it. They're just going to lay here and let those silly bulls do all the shoving they want. A massive animal like these elk has tremendous strength, and the larger one seems to be shoving that littler one around quite a little, but it looks like their sparring is more good-natured than anything. The elk kind of like it out on the nice grassy bench. It's a really good place for shoving and fighting, and plus they're kind of an open country animal anyway. Only the first settlers drove them back into the timber, where most people think they're a timber animal, but they'd probably prefer being out on these open grassy benches. After the bulls tire of their shoving, they decide to go on out and graze around a little bit while the cows are laid back trying to get a little bit of rest. If only that bugling would stop, it'd be a lot easier for those cows to rest. But that bugling went on all evening and through the night, and even the next day we could hear them bugling. And the clicking of antlers as the bulls shove each other around was very apparent all that night, and even the next morning. We heard a crash down in the trees. We thought a bear might be down there, so we're going down and take a look. I get there and I see where a bear has ripped a hornet's nest to bits. We move on around under a ponderosa. There are a couple Indian graves here where the warriors from down on the river were packed up here for their final resting spot where their spirits could see this awesome view that we're seeing here right now, right under this big old ponderosa pine. The Indian tribes mostly lived down on the river where they could eat the freshwater mussels and catch the salmon and steelhead that swam up the rivers. The next morning, we're up by the first light, and we don't have enough water even to go over to where we can get water. So we're capturing water that's trapped on the tarp that covers our tent. We get enough to fill our canteens, and we move over around the ponderosa and look up on the hill above us, and there's a nice little buck. He's the smallest member of a bachelor herd of 3. So we're going to sneak up there and see if we can get us some good deer meat. A rattlesnake is sort of in the way though, and he's kind of a crabby little guy. He looks like he wouldn't mind biting someone.
She get him? Yeah. Looks like he needs his head amputated, doesn't he?
What?
He needs his head up. Don't get worried. If he pulled loose, he could strike you there, Stephen.
Okay. Keep your head down. He's gone. Okay.
You got him?
Yeah, pull here. Wipe your butt off. You check your gun down. The dirt.
Watch that head too.
Yeah, fine right there.
Can you hold him up and I'll get his picture?
Stick it. Flip that out of the trail. Where's he at? On the trail.
You think it's about the same size?
Watch that head.
By now, the rain has started up again, and the mud is sticking to the bottoms of our feet, making it almost impossible to lift your foot. But still, we make it to McGraw Creek, where we'll get some water and check for bear. We look over across the hillside, and there we see it. An old mama bear with 3 little cubs, and she's just an excellent mother. She's very kind and considerate of her cubs and very tender to them. But we notice she has a severe problem. She has a terrible limp. It looks as though her right hind leg doesn't work at all. But just the same, she's done an excellent job with these cubs. They're real big and feisty, and they run and they're up a tree. And that takes an exceptional mother bear to raise the cubs. And we're trying to figure out whether something happened to her leg before she had the cubs or maybe after, but I would guess maybe she was in that condition when she had her cubs, and she seems to be able to get around pretty good, more like a 3-legged dog, and it doesn't really seem to be causing her too much problem, and she's pretty much adapted to the situation. She's busy foraging for food and watching these cubs all day long. A bear can probably deal with this problem much better than other animals because when there's a lot of snow on, all they have to do is go into a den and hibernate till spring comes. So maybe she'll be pretty good and raise those cubs, although most of the time when a sow has 3 cubs, by the time they're ready to wean at 2 years old. Usually they only have about one left, but she's exceptional having those cubs this late in the year and raising them to that size. That's kind of unusual. So maybe she'll just raise them to adulthood. We look over on the other hillside, and here comes trouble. It's a small boar moving down into the valley below. The boar, if they sense that the cubs aren't their own, they'll try to kill them. And since the cub's dead already, they'll go ahead and eat them. But first, they've got Mama Bear to deal with, and she'll fight to the death to save her cubs. The little boar is going over to this ponderosa, and we couldn't just figure out what he's doing. He may be eating some of the bark off from it, or else scratching, but it doesn't really look like he's scratching. I believe he's eating something in it, and he's shaking it like fury, maybe just because he can. He wants to look real macho. He's feeding his way down to the valley floor, down near where we are, and Stephen's waiting for him. That looks like that would be a good bear for Stephen. So Stephen's anxiously waiting for him. Maybe he can get a shot at him. He's taking his time, grazing his way down, checking for tasty berries. Hornet's nest's one thing they love. They'll dig up a hornet's nest that's below the ground and eat all the larvae out of it. And they do get stung some from the hornets, but it seems like they have pretty good immunity to the venom of a hornet. He's carefully moving his way down. Usually when you see a bear out in the open, unless he's feeding on something, he's always on the move. And further down he comes toward the valley floor. I switch over and watch the old sow part of the time, and she's not liking it at all that boar's coming. So she gathers her 3 cubs up, and they're off and out of there. She doesn't want to have a fight today, and it might be a little difficult to fight with only one hind leg. A lot of times they like to stand up on their hind legs, and I don't know how she would do that with only one. She disappears up into the timber of Hell's Canyon. We go down and check the McGraw Creek cabin out. There's a little plywood one that has been recently built this year. The old cabin, the roof got bad on it, water ran through it, a tree fell on it, and it's almost done for. But the new cabin, they've moved some of the old fixtures out of the old cabin into the new cabin, and it's still under construction. Stephen goes up and checks out the old root cellar where they kept their canned goods and vegetables. Then we go up on the bench and look at the old relic of the past. It's an old mowing machine that they harvested the hay on the bench with a team of heavy horses. We get back to our tent, and we brought some water from McGraw Creek, but we found we've captured a batch of water on the tent too, so we'll have plenty of water to cook anything Stephen wants to cook. The clouds are beginning to clear off a little bit, and it's starting to dry a little bit. That'll sure be good, so that mud won't be picking up on our feet. The next morning, we're up again early, and we're after those 3 bucks again. Dwayne and Stephen move up the hillside. There's some does right below the bucks, and the does ran and spooked the bucks again. Since we're running a little low on water, they went up the mountain, and I went on over the saddle and down into McGraw Creek. There's an old mine that looks like they've done a little prospecting. I go to McGraw Creek as it is quite loud, roaring its way down to the Snake River below. I fill up our canteens and water jugs with the best water you've ever drank.
Here, give me a knife.
Pin his head down. Better.
Hold it down a little tighter, Stephen. He needs it amputated.
Okay. Here, I got a knife right here. You want me to cut his head off?
Okay, move your gun barrel. Watch the head. Move your gun.
Take it off?
Move your gun, yeah. Watch the head. See the guy's mouth open?
Hold on.
It'll come from this side.
From what side?
This side. Don't go close to the gun barrel.
Yeah?
Yeah. Chop it. Okay.
That stopped it.
Stopped the noise, didn't it?
Yeah.
Wow, that's the biggest one yet, huh?
Watch out, his head's in there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wipe the gun barrel off, or butt off your gun too.
He stinks.
We encountered 3 rattlesnakes in just a very few minutes right on the trail. The largest one of all, I was walking up the trail and stepped right on him. He didn't seem to mind that much. He just crawled off the trail and started down the hillside, where Stephen pinned him and amputated his head. When the weather's cool like that and a little bit rainy, I've stepped on several rattlesnakes in my day, and it seems like they never can get around fast enough to strike you. I guess if they were warmer, they'd be able to, but I think they get coiled, and the next guy that comes along, if he doesn't see him, he's probably in a world of hurt. On this trip, Stephen and I each stepped on a rattlesnake, not seeing him on the trail ahead of us. We get to looking up on the hill for deer and forget about the rattlesnakes occasionally.
Come from my gun barrel side.
The snake's got a little medical problem and he needs his head amputated. He'll feel a lot better now.
Watch that head.
1, 2, I think.
Hold him down.
Yeah, I got him.
There, does he feel better now? Yeah, he feels better.
As we were walking right through the grove of Ponderosa, we look up on the hillside, and here's that group of does. It's 2 does and 2 fawns just above us, and they're the pesky ones that seem to be scaring those bucks away. They snort and take off, and away the bucks go. We finally figured out that the only deer we're seeing are the same ones we've been seeing all along, and those old bucks are just too smart for us to get up on out in the open. Maybe if we knew right where they were going to be, we could get up on them, but it doesn't look like we're going to do it. So we're going to pack up our tent and gear, and while the trail's rather dry, we're going to head on down the trail. Stephen was wanting to get a deer real bad, but it's not going to happen up here, it doesn't look like. As we're moving down the trail, down along the river, and then across McGraw Creek where it runs into the river, it's just dry there because it's running underground, and here's a great big Great Basin gopher snake. We won't bother him because they're a beneficial snake and they're non-venomous. They're a constrictor, so they get a hold of their prey and squeeze it to death. Above the trail, we see a little white speck, and that little white speck is a deer's rump. We see several head of deer up here grazing around right above the trail. So we're going to check them out and see if there might be a buck in them. One by one, they go up on the skyline and pose, and there's not an antler in the whole bunch. I only wish those old big bucks up higher could have been this gentle, where we could walk right up on them. We thought there might be a possibility that there'd be a buck laying down, so I walk up there and get them all up and look around, but no such luck, to Stephen's disappointment. Looks like he's not going to get him a buck here either. Sometimes those deer move into this grape patch and really eat the grapes, so we sneak up to the grape patch, but no such luck. There's no deer or bear there either. But we're going to fill our bags with grapes now so we can have some to take home to make grape jelly and grape juice. The grape juice and the grape jelly both, we find that it's probably even better if we mix it about half grapes and half elderberries. There's so many grapes here that we're going to pick all we can pack and still not even make a dent in it. We get in the vehicle and drive up on top at the viewpoint, and we're looking down where we were, where that little patch of trees is. That's a batch of locusts around a spring. At one time, ranchers had kraals there, and the piles you can see out on the bench are piles of stone, where they collected the stone and piled them to clear the fields where they were cutting hay. The little patch of trees right in the center of the screen, sort of a little V, that's where we last saw the old big bucks. And we can look down over the Snake River in the breaks of the Snake River Canyon. There are even a few flowers making a futile attempt to bloom here, the last blossoms of the summer, and maybe with some luck they can go to seed. The poison ivy is quite a bit of it around here, and more at the lower elevations. And the elderberries, the clusters of berries are hanging, weighting the elderberry bushes down. And Stephen's going to lighten the load on that bush a little bit by picking quite a few of them and putting in the bag to take home to mix with the grapes and make some excellent juice. We still need a few more grapes, so Stephen's going over and picks some of the grapes right around the outer edge of the grape patch. With grapes like this, it certainly doesn't take long to have all we can pack out of here. Some more wild flowers are in bloom down by the river, and then I see a sight I've never seen over here before. It's a herd of wild turkeys. Wild turkeys don't get me too excited, although I wouldn't mind putting one of those guys in the oven, but I fed enough of those fool birds when I was a kid to have a lifetime supply of them, and they look just like the old turkeys that we used to raise. These might be a little longer legged and a little more skinny, but they just look like the old-fashioned bronze turkey to me. And they're pecking around, trying to find them something to eat. They eat seeds, insects, and little lizards, and just about anything they can find. They seem to be doing quite well, and there's quite a few of them grazing around right on the edge of the Snake River. They've spread out over quite a bit of the area along the Snake River, and as we go up a little higher, someone has killed a coyote and laid him right alongside the road on a rock. If I had time, I'd skin him. It looked like he had an excellent hide, but I didn't take time to do that. Along the river, a blue heron is winging it just above the surface of the Snake River. He'll fly up till he finds a nice rock to stand on, and he'll sit there and spear himself a nice fish dinner for tonight. There are even deer down along the river. A gumweed is in bloom, and an old doe is having her a meal of some berries on a bush. There's no buck with her either. She sneaks along, grabbing every bite of food she can find on the way. As she moved on down a little farther, she spooked out another. And then a little rooster quail came running out, and he's going to make some good time running here. He seems to be a pretty fast little quail. He's picking those little feet up and putting them down pretty fast. He must be a little confused. He may have thought he was a road runner. But now it's time we have to start thinking about heading back toward home. This is the first time we've ever gone to this part of the world and came home without a deer. But there's not a very good population of them this year, and I guess there was a pretty bad winter kill, plus the heavy predators have taken a lot of them. The sun has already set by the time we head out of the canyon and down the highway toward Halfway. We'll go to Duane's at Hermiston and spend the night, and then the next morning Stephen and I will head home. Mary took the movie camera and took some pictures of the macho hunters petting her little hunting dogs, I guess they are. At least they hunt for a piece of cheese or a cookie. Stephen and I stopped briefly at Cascade Locks to watch some of the Indians that are fishing on their tribal treaty rights. This particular one only has one arm, but he seems to be able to handle that net rather well. They're catching big Chinook and steelhead right out of the Columbia River with the gill nets. He's working the net quite a bit. That's to get the weeds and stuff out of it. And it's probably a little difficult with only one arm, but he's managing it, and it looks like he's doing okay because we see him pulling in some of the giant old Chinook. And then a nice big steelhead is ready to come in next. He's pulling this real nice big steelhead right up next to the boat, taking the weeds off the net as he goes, and here comes that steelhead aboard the boat. At one time there were rapids, and the ships couldn't get around the rapids, so locks were built here at Cascade Locks. Then the dam was built and flooded it, and so the locks are no longer used, but the Indians